welcome everybody to Tuesday, May 2nd, our policy committee meeting for May. And I'm just going to thank ahead of time all of the staff that we have that are presenting our different policies. So really appreciate you taking the time to be with us so we can ask questions and garner your expertise. And if you wouldn't mind when you come to present, just introduce yourself and your title, just so the public has that in their mind as well when they're listening to this meeting, like I know hundreds of people will be. Our first, we have a very robust number of policies for first readings and one policy for our second reading. There's no changes on that. And then a number of regulations and renaming, and all of that's really more informational for us as well. And I appreciate Member Sandholm and Member Sadowski taking the time to be prepared for today's meeting. So the first policy for first reading is community education. And this is a new policy, and we have Jeremy here to come and present for us. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. I was told that everyone has read this policy, correct?
Yes, we've had a copy of it.
Excellent. So what I'll just say quite briefly, knowing that there's lots of policies coming up after me, community education is positioned uniquely in school districts across the United States. For sure in Minnesota, we have added just one minor thing to our particular policy, which is subpoint E, which talks about our outreach and collaboration for the Duluth community being equitable and ongoing. We serve people in our community from when they wake up to when they go to sleep, from before they're born actually in ECFE to when they pass. And so having this statement would be, I think, not only in line with what Duluth Schools is doing, but a great affirmation for what we're doing in community ed.
So again, the purpose of this policy is to convey to employees and to the general public the important role of community education within the school district. Community education and its funding stream includes community education, early childhood and family education, ECFE. And then the statement of the policy reads as Jeremy highlighted, and then the other section is just that community education has an advisory council.
Correct. We're currently in the process of making that. We haven't had one historically. We have our first date set up, and I actually did bring a sample letter of our invite, and that first meeting should be happening actually just May 16th coming up there. So we've been reaching out to various community members as essentially designated by the state for who we should be aligning ourselves with, and we're ready to roll.
And I think we all know that we've had a very robust community education program for years, and a lot of creativity under COVID with our community education programming, some upgrades over the years since I've been on the board with this, the reach with the books that you put out, all free all over the community to advertise programming. And so we often every year do get a presentation on community education, but we've had a history of a wonderful community education program. So we have a couple questions, Member Sadholm.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So the outreach and collaboration is done with this advisory council, or is there other methods and ways we're doing community outreach?
It's with the advisory council and then co-collaborating with other departments that exist within our district currently. I'm doing an extensive amount of work with Nate Smith in the Office of Education Equity. I've also collaborated with American Indian Education. I myself am a former integration specialist. I think that too, the people that we're reaching out to, that we have connected, that are on the advisory committee and are joining the advisory committee, are also key participants for reaching out into new and different community branches that we may not have, like, for example, the 1854 Treaty Authority. We've invited them to participate on our committee. I had a conversation yesterday with one of the people who works for them, and just their scope and who they know are just further branches beyond who we may know too. So that's kind of the point.
How are things done before?
Don't know. Brand new to the position and had little experience with it before. So a lot of my expertise comes in the equity work. And there is an incredible amount that we can do within equity work to increase what we were looking at it as a circle. You talked about like what we've done in the past and it being relatively robust and whatnot. Yes, and we want to grow that circle. Under state statute, there are multiple subdivisions that serve youth. Right now, one of the conversations that Anthony and I are having are expanding on subdivisions that are specified at youth services and youth enrichment, and further conversations surrounding the ability for credit-bearing work in the youth services subdivision of our statute. So the executive director for BOSA, Karen Schaub, is a mentor and a friend. She's a veteran of community education, and I have been working with her and the Minnesota Community Education Executive Director, Matt DeKausen, to kind of like see what we're doing, what other districts are doing, and kind of doing what we can to create further more robust, innovative programming. We know that within state statute serving subdivision that identifies youth services, there's only a couple districts in the entire state that actually utilize that effectively. And we know that like Anoka, Hennepin, and Minneapolis are two of the ones that like come to light. We're looking at some of the detail work that they do in their districts and seeing how that might potentially replicate within our own district. One of the things that is misunderstood often about community education is that it's this thing that happens out here. It really is meant to be an augmentation of the rest of the school system. We serve everybody in the community, and we serve them at every time of the day, and we serve them throughout the entire year. And the statute, as it's written, is meant to be that augmentation to provide not just enriching activities that are done by the community members for the community members, but also to embellish the work of the academics that we do too. I had a meeting today with the collaborative. They have a new OST director, and some of the at Denfeld. And one of the things that they're working on doing is looking at different ways for increasing credit recovery. And I know that that's something that we are positioned uniquely to do. That I'm hoping to, and through conversations with Anthony, implement using community education. In again, we have both youth services and youth enrichment. With the youth services, there's a ton embedded in the statute that identifies work that can be done in career and technical education and college and career readiness work. And I have an extensive personal background in that too. So.
And we really appreciate your leadership in the area. I think that you have many strengths. Super minor piece, just that when we make the final change on letter E, just the formatting, the spacing is a little different, and
sure.
Probably don't need a capital C on collaboration. But,
yeah.
Thank
you.
Former English.
I'll throw it into my Grammarly.
Exactly. But I really appreciate the sentiment and the equity lens that you bring to the work, and especially putting it in the policy.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you too, because I think that was enlightening from the standpoint of, so many people in the community, and sometimes those of us that have participated in community education programs in the past, kind of think of it as just kind of this stuff that goes on in the evening in our buildings across the district, and mainly aimed at adults. And yes, this is good to hear that we're targeting the needs of our students and really basically all of the citizens of the community. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really looking forward to like further developing it into like a saturated augmentation.
Did you have another question?
Oh, I was just going to say I also appreciate the focus on equity. I was wondering how often the advisory council will meet.
It's required by statute 4 times a year, but we're open to meet as often as we'd like. I think that our initial design right now is to try to hit 6 times in this year. Knowing that a lot of the work when you're developing a new advisory council requires a lot of like establishing the ground rules, figuring out the roles, having people make sure that they're fully onboarded to what even we are, to make sure that they're up to date on our own statute that they're going to be supporting.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure that the council will bring forth a lot of really good again, and just over the last few years, I've noticed there's a lot, there's just been classes offered at different locations, which has been really nice, so thank you.
Yeah, transportation's at the forefront of our conversation too, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy,
Yep.
for being here to present.
You bet, thanks.
Great, so that's, Community Education 901, first reading. The second is policy 712, video surveillance other than on buses. And this is replacing 3188, video security other than on buses. Was that one that Anthony was gonna?
I can cover it.
Oh, okay.
Or can do it.
Introduce yourself again, Bart, just for the record.
Bart Smith, Technology Manager for the district. This is more of just renumbering, not Minnesota School Board Association. You can see our old one is using this one as well, back in 2010. We have a strike through on line 3, which we did in 2010 as well, but the rest of the policy is pretty much the same.
And actually, I think the strike through, I think we were thinking about striking out the last sentence. I'm sorry that I missed that. That's on me. Rather, we don't necessarily, we could still have video surveillance, but not normally be used in bathrooms, locker rooms, or other areas. Be placed under video surveillance. But I think the part that we were thinking was a little different was video surveillance in bathrooms or locker rooms will only be utilized in extreme situations with extraordinary controls and only expressly approved by the superintendent. I think that was the part that we're thinking about taking out.
So to clarify, not the first sentence, just the second sentence.
Of number 3, that's what I was thinking.
You would add that one back in.
I would. That,
Yeah, we didn't want to note we could put them there, but it does say we can put them on any district property.
I'm just thinking that since it's our public policy, for the public to understand that we don't normally use, the locker rooms and bathrooms are normally places where we don't videotape would be clear. And then I was thinking about the superintendent part. The only circumstance I can think of that would involve having video cameras in locker rooms or bathrooms would be something that the police had. I mean, and that would fall into a different jurisdiction, if there's some super extreme situation. I can't think of any situation in which that I would, as superintendent, be putting video cameras in bathrooms. So I'd say we add back that first line of line 3.
Okay, but then we strike,
And from the secondary perspective, that would be okay. We do have monitors that are in locker rooms inside. We don't have surveillance video. We tend to have people that are there when we're, yeah. So
But not video.
no, not video. So I think that is accurate to what's actually happening in our schools.
so any other questions on that? Number 3.
So now I'm hearing that we're gonna add back in both lines?
No,
No.
just the first one,
Just the first line,
not the second one.
not the second?
But even under extreme circumstances, put that up. Isn't signage or required to say this area is under video surveillance?
That's why I'm saying I don't want to be given the authorization to have extreme circumstances. And I'm saying that for not just for myself as superintendent, but future superintendents. And sometimes strange things have happened in other districts where people have placed video cameras in inappropriate situations, and sometimes superintendents have been involved in things that aren't appropriate too. And so I don't think having that line in there, I think potentially opens us up to some liabilities. And we did talk it through with our attorney, and they felt like it was okay to pull that
when we review it at the board meeting, if we can kind of clarify the second line we're striking, we're keeping the first.
And this is the first reading.
Yes, this is the first reading.
So,
I'm sorry.
And then again, like all of our policies at the end are the legal references and the cross references with other policies with NSBA and MASA. So if people want to do more work on that one. Any other questions on this one? Okay, so again, the first reading. The next policy is 509, enrollment of non-resident students, and this is replacing policy 5035, non-resident enrollees.
Yeah, I think if we,
Okay, we'll wait on that one then. And then, let's see, the next one on D, 532.
maybe we could go down to 515 perhaps, or are you ready with the?
We're ready, we don't need it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so which one do we not,
We're doing 532.
532.
okay, so 532, use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds, and this is a mandatory policy. And I'll turn it over to you both, and please introduce yourself again.
Sure, I'm Laura Thurston, and I'm serving as the Assistant Director of Student Services. We are recommending that the district adopt the policy from the MSBA 532. It is different from the current policy. The current policy the district has for 532 was adopted in 2016. The model that MSBA puts out is revised in 2020. It adds clarity and specificity around students with IEPs and when they can be removed, by whom they can be removed, under what circumstances they can be removed, and the reporting process. The current policy the district is using lacks the specificity that is included in the updated version that MSBA provides. I can answer some questions if you have any further questions or need some clarity around this. This is a required policy. And so we recommend that the district go ahead and adopt the revised version.
And in your policy, under just kind of notes, besides saying it's required by state statute to have this policy, it does reference the laws and Chapter 96 when changes were made. And I won't read all of that, but again, the reference to this policy is noted right at the beginning. And again, I always like to just read the purpose of this policy is to describe the appropriate use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove, if necessary, a student with an individualized education program, IEP, from school grounds. Then it goes on to highlight the general statement of the policy, definitions, removal, the process removal of students, and then again, all the legal references and the cross references with other policies.
I have a small question. I don't think it's a big deal, but in section G, reporting to the Minnesota Department of Education, MDE, we've been kind of moving towards maybe not listing names. Is it required that we list the commissioner's name, or do we want to leave it just the commissioner of MDE?
You can just leave it as Commissioner of MDE.
I think that would be fine.
Because the commission changes in this
Because the
policy.
commissioner changes.
And we do report to MDE. The Special Services Department has an annual responsibility as well as a quarterly responsibility. Jason Crane, Special Ed Director, good to see everybody again. I didn't identify my name. And we appreciate the the way that MSBA updated this to include that because it is a district responsibility. Many of this came about nearly 12 years ago, and we introduced our first restrictive procedure policy when I was an assistant director, and Laura Fredrickson was the lead director at that time. So we've been going through some revisions of this, and next we're going to present on a regulation.
Is that now or is that later?
We tend to do the regulations all at the same time.
Because they're kind of attached together.
So with the regulation then,
No, I mean, we tend to wait and do the regulations till we get to that.
yes ma'am.
It's just helpful for the process of it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions specific to the policy?
So in general, if a student needs to be removed or if there's attention directed there, the crisis team and or administration would step in first before the liaison officer or police officer.
Yes, especially if a student on an IEP. We train all of our special education staff, paraprofessionals and teachers, related service personnel. We also train, in addition, we train supervisory assistants, administration, principals and assistant principals in our nonviolent crisis response. We use CPI as the nonviolent crisis response, and all those people are trained first, so we use our staff first before we use police liaison officers.
So hopefully it doesn't get to that.
We don't want it to escalate. Do that.
And section B does cover it specifically in terms of when the request that the police liaison officer, police officer removed, like the steps to that happening. That's in section B there. And I think Member Sadowski's comments about MDA, the commissioner not being named, is fine. There are some policies that we do need to have names because of the legalities with the policy.
And the MD model policy does not have the commissioner's name within it, so.
MDE's model policy does.
Or, I'm sorry, MSBA's model policy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you both.
Thanks.
Okay. We moved ahead, Assistant Superintendent Bonds, but we can move back up now to 509, enrollment of non-resident students replacing 5035 non-resident enrollees.
Right. And actually can, let's put mine at the end and I can get myself all set up here. So we can
Oh,
continue.
okay, sure.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Thank
yeah, not a problem. So, the E then, 514 bullying policy, and we have Jake.
Well, Jake Lorenz, climate coordinator for Duluth Public Schools.
And this policy is a mandatory policy, just to confirm that.
Yes, and really one revamping to take some vagueness out, but also to adopt to the MSBA model policies. So that's been somewhat expanded. Before I go into too much of the weeds with this, I do also just want to say, you all know we do second step, the social emotional learning K through 8, and we recently for next year purchased bullying prevention kits that are through second step as well. And so all of our elementaries will have those as well. Cogden had it this year, and their feedback was extremely positive. And so just another tool for our support teams and administrators to have in that kind of prevention piece with bullying.
And again, I've just been reading the purpose of the policy and then opening it up for questions. The purpose of this policy is to prohibit bullying behavior and assist the Duluth School District in its role of preventing and responding to acts of bullying, intimidation, violence, and other similar disruptive behavior. The Duluth School District strives to provide safe, secure, and respectful learning environments for all students in school buildings, on school grounds, school buses, and at school-sponsored activities. A safe and civil environment is needed for students to learn and attain high academic standards and to promote healthy human relationships. This policy protects all students against bullying behavior, including bullying behavior on the basis of actual or perceived race, ethnicity, color, creed, national origin, immigration status, sex, marital status, familiar status, socioeconomic status, physical appearance, sexual orientation, including gender identity and expression, academic status related to student performance, disability, status with regard to public assistance, age, military status, association with a person or group with one or more of the aforementioned actual or perceived characteristics or any other distinguishing characteristics defined in Minnesota Human Rights Act, Chapter 363A. And we, the board passed this policy, or the last adopted this policy on 8/22/2017. And I was on the board at the time. We had a lot of community members a part of this review.
The one that I have, maybe I wasn't looking at one, I was looking at the proposed, has that actually
Yeah,
Xed out?
the third paragraph is
There.
scratched and the fourth is added. The fourth is the
Okay.
largest one that's added to take place of the third.
Okay,
And
got
again,
it.
it's matching the MSBA language.
Okay, so,
Oh, I
I
just read
see.
the wrong purpose.
Oh, you're all good. You had the first two, right?
Yes, I did.
it's,
Thank you.
so cause I had a question, like, why are we getting rid of this? But I guess I can see that they reworded it a little bit different, and we're moving to kind of in that direction as the
Yes.
MSBA.
Yeah. And another thing that helps with this is our revamped website. And so we have the online reporting tool for bullying and harassment. As an employee before, I had to Google it to actually get to the right page. I couldn't find a way to navigate.
Sure.
And so the new website is much more user friendly to get to that point. That's just one way you can report. And then it could be an anonymous report through the
So,
Thank you. I feel like I should read the purpose again. But
is it, so when bullying occurs, and obviously we have our bully form, the form that we can fill out if that happens. But is there consistency within our schools on how those things are addressed? When I'm reading this, like, it's so important, but it's also really important that we try to not have that implicit bias and things like that, so,
Yeah. I think really the first step we do is to see if it hits the definition, right? Like, is there a perceived power difference? Is this a prolonged experience? Just being in, all these reports go to me, and let's say about half of them end up don't matching that definition. It might be more of a one-time occurrence. Once it gets to my level, it's usually a communication with the school staff, communication with that parent, if it does match the definition of bullying. And then we're basically deciding if it needs further investigation, if the stories are really aligning well. And so from our lens up here, I handle them all the same. If I need extra help, I get Mr. Bonds involved to help me as well. A lot of it ends up being direct work with that school and helping that team possibly navigate what is occurring there and making sure we're doing it in best practice.
I just have a quick question, because I'm on this section, and I don't know if I missed it somewhere else, and Director Crane, maybe you can step in here too. So I mean, I see this section on bullying directed at children with the IEP. How do we handle it if it's the bully that's on the IEP? And does that need to be covered in this policy too, or is it covered somewhere else?
Do you want to answer some of that?
That's a good question. I think if just from my experience, I'm usually probably working closer with that case manager. It might just change the adults I'm working with in the case. And then if we need further help, we might get some people that work with Jason, like Mark Lippett, Captain Hatfield, who have some more specialty areas in there. And there might be some, changes to their behavior plan to try to mitigate, basically, do we need to change setting? Do we need to change what the routine is? And so that we can, at the best of our ability, mitigate risk or of that happening again. That's how I always come across these. How do we lower the risk as much as possible of reoccurring behaviors with this? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, just IEP services have several ways where they can target and support students in the school system. Often IEPs do have social emotional components. The goals would be targeting what behavior and skills can we teach, reteach, and improve with students. Another really important part of an IEP is a behavior plan, a positive behavior support plan. And I was an EBD case manager for 17 years in Duluth schools. I had some students on my caseload that I would meet and call team meetings as many as 15 times a year. A IEP is required to update annually at least once, but for behavior students, we meet quite frequently. An IEP meeting can be called by any team member as often as needed. So that would be a response. When a student with an IEP needs extra help, we can call a meeting.
And Paul, I think that's answered in that paragraph on page 8, right underneath the red. It says in order to prevent or respond to bullying or other prohibited conduct committed by or directed against a child with a disability. So it includes them committing the bullying.
What section was that? We couldn't hear you.
It's page 8 of the policy. So right underneath the red,
Right.
if you're looking at that. Number 5, under school district action.
I mean, this came into my head from the prior policy we were talking about with removal of the student. I'm thinking, well, there's kind of a connection here. Just how are we going to approach that? Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciated the thoughtfulness in section 5 on page 7, just for the student harmed. Just all of the supports that were noted, that would be for that student.
Yeah, these are so case by case.
Yep.
And
Yep.
really our duty is to treat kids as they want to be treated. And every kid has different needs, and so we're able to provide it. I feel like that's our job as educators. Within limits for sure. But
I think it also aligns with what we heard from our parents and community members and families about students wanting to feel a sense of safety, but also a sense of belonging. And I think having policies like this that are thoughtful and well structured helps ensure that that's the case no matter what school, no matter what the situation.
I appreciated the section on training and education, both that you renamed it to training and education. I think it was section 8. And I guess, is there anything you want to stress about the training of staff and volunteers?
I think right now we have a lot of awesome systems that are moving forward in the preventative scope. So one is next year we'll be training all of our non-PBIS schools in PBIS. And so after next year we'll be officially a PBIS district, a positive behavioral intervention and support district. And a big chunk of that, even this year before we were fully getting trained, is that tier 1, what does every kid get? What are we doing to have kids enjoy school, have fun at school? How are we acknowledging when they're doing it right? That's been one of our big focuses. And then kind of on the further tiers, something that I'm really proud of with my coworker Callie DeBrent is we've trained 100 people in restorative practices with harm circles. And so it gives us one of the strongest tools when we're trying to solve conflict, because you do need to sit down and you need to hash it out, and it needs to be in a safe manner, and that's where harm circles are absolutely valuable. I'd say this is our first year, and a lot of people are, getting more versed in it. a lot of the trainings happened last year, but we have a training happening right now with mostly teachers. And so we want to continue to train people as much as we can because it's such a powerful tool, and doesn't do band-aids. It goes to the root cause and fixes that underlying concern, issue, behavior. And then I also think about second step and that preventative measure with not only the bullying prevention kit, but they're really focusing on healthy relationships, good coping skills, right? So I guess I feel really positive of the preventative systems. Again, things that outlast people. These are systems that are going to be embedded in our schools for a long time to come.
Are those second step bullying prevention kits going to be in our middle schools too? Did you say?
So they don't make it for middle school. There's a lot of good things about second step. The elementary is super robust, and I'm really happy about it. It's only 2 years old. The middle school is over 10 years old, and there's some things lacking there that I'm going to be meeting with those teams to see how we can make this a little more 21st century, because there is some lacking areas with the middle school one that we'd like to make better. And then just talking with second step, they don't have plans to revamp that in the future, which is a little disheartening. 10 years, right, is a long time. And so we're hoping that we can kind of take what they have and make it more fit our students in middle school. They do hit on areas of that in that curriculum. I just think right now it's missing some kids. It's not as engaging as an elementary counterpart of the second step. Yep.
When you were mentioning that people are going through training right now, staff are going through training, teachers or what?
Yeah, this one actually is mostly teachers, and so that's exciting because so far we've targeted our behavior responders, assistant principals, our deans, counselors, social workers, integration specialists, American Indian liaisons. We've trained over 90% of them, and the 10% didn't come to the training. And so feel really good about that. And now being able to have a few more subs available allows us to do this. We actually allocated a substantial amount of AWARE grant funds to have more trainings, but we have not been in a spot with substitute teachers to be able to provide more. And so this is our second training of the year when we were more hoping to have about 6. So we're going to have to continue to get creative. It's 3 days. So that's a huge ask. But that is our goal, to continue to train as many people interested in it as possible. Great teaching tool as well, beyond just the farm worker.
Any other questions? Okay, so this will be our first reading, and we had some back-to-back materials around this because of, and that is why I made the mistake of reading that intro. So we'll have an opportunity again to review it in our second reading. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for all you all do.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and then the next policy is policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records and public notice. With the juvenile justice system request for information. And this is replacing 5060, and this is also a mandatory policy.
Hi, Jen Larva, Director of Secondary Education. So there are a bunch of us that are engaging in some work around our student and family handbook for next year. And one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to ensure that our policy, or that our handbook is including all policies that are required by statute and policies that are required by things that need to be in the handbook because of either policy or by statute. And so it's been a big project. And one of the things that we found is that we were out of date with some of our pupil records policies. We have everything in there. This is just, again, just like how Laura had talked about the specificity of the policies. So this newer version of the MSBA policy includes a lot of stuff in it. This is a very long policy. It's a very legalese kind of policy as well. But we want to ensure that we're following this policy to protect our student records, to protect our how we're disseminating information. We just wanted to make sure that this one got on our books, the newer version of the MSBA policy. So it is a very meaty policy to review.
Anybody else just use their internet?
No?
Start.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
We have I'm noting that there's a strikeout on page 6, I believe, the top of page 6, the red line point, basically the note from MSBA saying that could have reference to the police liaison officers and the definition of school official. But we're not putting that in. It's an optional piece and something that they give some degree of warning about, caution that it's important that you're designating when that counts and then when that doesn't. But we're choosing not to have that included, correct?
Yes, I believe that was part of it. This one also kind of ties to some of the things with our video surveillance. And I think that this was something that had been vetted by the lawyer, if I remember correctly, with our SRO contract. If they're determined to be school official, like right now, they have to request access to our video surveillance.
Through a subpoena.
What? Through a subpoena. If they were considered a school official, I think that then they would have access to it. So at this point in time, we're maintaining that line of separation through our school policy.
In letter J, this is not a big deal at all, this one, but
A lot
parent,
of J's.
and then it says, well, so there's a lot of J's. Let me go back up then.
It's
So I'm on,
under definitions.
Okay.
I can give you the page,
Top of page 5.
page 5. Just wondering why, wouldn't it be easier to just say guardian? But, very,
So, again, we're trying to follow the model MSBA policies, and this is how they have it written out. I believe that if we were to change everything to Guardian, there's probably a lot of things in this policy then that would have to follow and be changed, and so that would be the my recommendation is just to maintain that model
It
policy.
does have a guardian in that first sentence.
Yeah, it does in the
It does.
definition.
Mhm.
and some other, I did comments on the page online right now, so if anyone else has questions, I think I have a couple more, but I'm trying to get my comments up since it was 30 pages.
A lot of this is procedural type of stuff that's in this policy, ensuring the protection of our student information, people records.
There was a lot of language in here about when the student turns 18 and the parent still having some consent to get records when they're a student. Just trying to find, just given some of the work that I've done over the years, is there a way that students could revoke? Like I'm saying, after they've graduated, let's say they were in an unsafe home environment or had unsafe caregivers, would they be able to, when they were 18, revoke those guardians' rights to accessing these records when they themselves were a young adult, 18 through 21? That's a question that I had. I know that would probably be pretty rare, but I've known individuals to be in that situation.
So I mean, the age of majority for Minnesota is 18 years of age. I I would have to look at the specific area in which you're talking about. Again, we're following the MSBA policy as it is being proposed.
We can share a special ed side of that,
Yeah.
if you want.
Please
So
do.
for IEP meetings, when students reach age of 18, we have to invite the student, and the student gets to invite their parents as a request to come to the meeting or not. And we've got several 18-year-olds that says, I don't want my parents to attend. We have to honor that. There's also a process for some students that need guardianship to be maintained with the parents, and that's a court proceeding that they have to do with the judge. And then they present those court documents to us, and then if we have that documentation in place, then we still contact and invite the parents first on behalf of the child. Make sense?
I see eligible students in some areas, so like parent or eligible students, so I'm assuming when they say eligible student, that they're talking about students that are 18 or older. Like some of the areas where like the military, release information, those things.
Yeah, and I think because it's tied to so many state statutes, I would recommend any questions around that go through NSBA's lawyers or our lawyers. I mean, just before we made any changes. Yeah, there's a lot of state statutes, and that means sometimes the language we need to keep.
So I believe on page 11, number 10 addresses that. Because it says
To comply with
an eligible student may seek protection, but they would need the court order.
Is that page 11?
Page 11 of the policy, yeah, number 10.
You're talking about section disclosure of school records prior to exclusion, that number 10?
Judicial order.
Yeah, to comply, comply with the judicial order is what it starts with.
And if we end up with more specific question, I'd be glad to follow up with Terry Morrow or anybody else from MSBA. I have a call with them tomorrow morning, so if there's something I can ask in general.
There's a lot of legal references in this one, so just be cautious.
So, John, you will follow up with kind of general questions on this, or?
If there's a more specific question that goes beyond what adult clarified in section 11. But, so if you, I meet at 9, if you happen to have something more specific, I'm glad to ask it. They geek out on specific policy questions. I'm not sure they'd be glad to give us great details.
It's a good point about all the statutes.
Great question, though, and I appreciate your thoughts on protecting vulnerable youth.
And again, this is the first reading of it, so. Any other questions? Okay, now we will go back to Assistant Superintendent, and we'll go back to C, 509, enrollment of non-resident students.
Thank you. And this policy, the enrollment of non-resident students, is a policy that's going to replace policy 5035, so 5035. It is replacing that policy. As you see, as attached, 5035 is pretty simplistic. It's a very short paragraph that details the fact that we do engage in allowing non-residents to enroll. The new policy 509 spells out specifically what is allowed by statute and in practice. Adele and others have been really working on bringing these policies, and Adele can add some additional information to this. This is an MSBA policy, not a policy that we are adopting
policy, since the assistant superintendent handles open enrollments, it also gives the assistant superintendent authority to close open enrollment at certain grades or an entire school based on capacity and space. So this was done last summer at East Mordine because they literally ran out of lockers. They just didn't have lockers for students for any more. And then whenever an open enrollment is denied, we do let them know other schools that they could attend. So if they got denied at Mordine East, we suggest we do have space at Lincoln Park, or we have space at Duluth.
When I read this, because I know you handle all of this.
Yeah.
And it says superintendent's review, and I'm wondering if that's just synonymous, that it's assistant superintendent. Or designate.
This has been traditionally the way that it's worked here in our district, but also in quite a few other districts. Usually there's an assistant superintendent who oversees teaching and learning and enrollment that would be fall in their purview. Assistant superintendent is always flows through well, but I'll keep them in mind.
So we don't need to have assistant superintendent.
No, it's pretty much understood. It's superintendent of lots of things or designate.
David, we're still having our policy meeting, so you'll want to step out because we can only have 3 members here. No, we got a robust meeting going on right now, so we're working to get through it. Thank you.
We'll close with that.
So any further questions on that one? Enrollment of non-resident students. And again, there are legal references as well as the cross references with NSBA and MESA. Again, that's a first reading, so we'll have a second reading. And then the next thing on our agenda is the policy for the second reading, and that's our overdose medication policy. There weren't any changes based on our last discussion on this. Any other questions as we move this policy forward for the second reading?
I can just give a 20-second update.
Okay.
So Crystal Deal has been working hard behind the scenes. We've secured a vendor to get the dosage for naloxone, Narcan. And we're gonna train all staff that needs this support training, and we're gonna do that in August. We wrestled with doing it in June, but we got a lot going on in district, so we're gonna do it in August. So we've got medication on order, and we've got the training schedule set up. We're in a good spot.
And do you want to just review in general the staff that will receive this training?
Well, it's expanding as we do our research around this.
Okay.
Administrative staff, principals, assistant principals, nursing staff throughout our district will be trained. There were some great questions about athletic activities and things like that. So we have site managers who manage the games, for example, at East High School. We'll train as many people as we need to have access to that dosage when we have people on our campuses.
Yeah, and just a reminder, that was the thing we talked a bit about at last month's meeting, is what was struck out was when they're just during the school day, when we have people not school district activities such as over the weekend, and because we just didn't have capacity yet.
We're learning more and more as we go. Thanks.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Okay. Any other comments on that policy? Okay. Then the last section then is the regulations, and again, these are all informational, and many of them, or some of them are renumbering of regulations, and so did you want to review that? Do we want to walk through each of them, or?
So the first one for the video surveillance, Bart left, but everything's the same in that was just since he brought the 712, we wanted the regulation number to match. And then the next one is the 532 that went with Laura and Jason that they talked to Marshall. They made some changes to that.
So the changes to this one, the district is required to have a restrictive procedures plan and a model. And our district has adopted the crisis prevention intervention model. Our district has two departments that engage in the use of restrictions or restrictive practices, and that's early childhood as well as student services. And so we met with the early childhood to align our work. And this policy then, you'll see in under section B, under staff training, the recommendation, the wording change really is to change from being special education or special services to say Duluth Public Schools, because we have two different departments that use the restrictive procedures. Likewise, in section G, the keeping of records, each department keeps their own, so the wording changed to be retained by ISD 709 rather than designating a specific department. If you go to section I, the wording changes to become more specific here because special education, when we do restricted procedures, we have reporting practices and we have review, expectations for review of the restriction or the restrictive practices that we engage in. And so we added the words for students with an IEP and to two paragraphs there to specify that it is for the special education department use. Head Start, early childhood is not under the same mandates or expectations. So really the policy, again, is to be updated since it was last accepted in 2016. So we're updating it, adding clarity, delineating which department does this specific work.
Any questions on the regulation? Okay. Thank you for staying for that. And then, the next one then is 513R, student promotion, retention, and program design. And Jen Larva.
I'll just scoot up.
Thank you.
Just walk out there. So last month we came with Kaylee Pelkey and she had explained the changes that we wanted to make to our regulation, including some due dates. And there were some recommendations that had been made from this committee and she has now put them into the regulation. So I don't remember the specifics, what you had asked, but I do know that there were some suggestions that were made and that we made those changes.
And then if you look at the draft one, that's dated 5/2/23, she had me highlighted the suggestions and doing it, so you can see where she's inputting
Thank you.
So the changes were initially in yellow, then the suggestions added in green. And it was after the purpose, acceleration guidelines in that section. And then also in section,
I think it's about the appeal process with a lot of it.
Yeah.
Talks about the appeal process.
yes, so it's number 7. Parents may appeal the committee's decision by writing a letter or request for further consideration to the superintendent or designee. If the need for further consideration is determined, the site team will be reconvened and provided any additional information. And any questions on that one? And then the other recommendation was,
I believe it's the same, it's
the
another
same, but-
appeal, just in a different area. So we had the
transportation.
whole grade and, yeah. And then the subject acceleration. So for each area, she added that appeal process statement.
So, is everyone clear on that one? again, these are informational. And then the last one was what was a placeholder. Let's see. 515R regulations and forms, and this is just renumbering 5060R regulations and forms. Oh, wait, no. There was one more.
So there's two pieces.
Okay.
Yep, so 4D is the form protection and privacy of pupil records and public notice and juvenile justice system request for information. Part of the reason why we wanted to put this in front of you now is that we are going to be embedding the public notice into the student handbook. So when you open this up, you do see the public notice at the very beginning, and that is something that we need to make sure that families have access to at the start of the school year. That's one of the things that is required of us. And then at the bottom of it, there is a form around the juvenile justice system request for information. So when they're requesting information, there's a form that they need to complete. So this one is new, where the other ones are just renumbering. But this is also MSBA's, came along, it's a companion piece to MSBA's model policy 515 is the form that comes along with the model policy.
And that'll be at the front part of the handbook, did you say?
I'm not sure where it fits in the back. Yeah, in the appendix. Yeah. The nice thing about the handbook is it does have very distinguished parts, so it's easier to follow than we currently have, and there is an area for policies.
When about are we looking at having that presented to us?
Because of Adele's pregnancy, June.
Put a hard deadline.
We have a very hard deadline, and we are working really hard to get things done for that to be presented to you next month. So it will be quite lengthy. The handbook is like 80-something pages right now. I think it's like 88 pages, and so it's a lot to look at and review. So be prepared. You'll have a little homework for next meeting.
But it will be shorter than our current.
It will be shorter. And we know that we will be assured that everything that needs to be in a family and student handbook is in a family and student handbook. We'll have that guarantee there. So.
And I know we'll have a chance to ask this question then, but it will be both mailed out as well as online for families, right?
Yes, it will be mailed out, but it will also be mailed out with a survey asking families if they would like to continue receiving it physically.
Get some information from them.
Okay, any questions on those last two pieces? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to give special thanks to Patty and Jen for all. Many people on the team will work on it, but many policies coming forward. Thanks to Penny and Patty did quite a bit, even though she was under the weather last week. And just getting all these policies into our handbook is taking a step forward with transparency and responsibility. Appreciate all the work we're doing.
So we thank you, and yes, certainly note that many of our staff were involved with bringing all of this forward, and so many of them at one time. So we appreciate that. We're moving through that checklist. So thank you. Okay, so the policy meeting for May is done, and again, many of these policies are for our first reading, so we will have a chance to review them again next week. Thank you.